Hey folks, I've already done an introduction to come because I was working on this project and I hadn't done my finished little block here. Beginner block. Very, very pretty, used for scraps. This is my block here that I'm making. I don't know what I'm going to be making with it. I do know I'm going to be trying to put it together with some sashing, because I explain that later on in my video. The only thing with this simple little block, which ended up fairly decent size, I use packs of 5-inch squares. Okay, I use 5-inch squares. I'm not giving you any precise measurements, because you could use 3-inch squares or 4-inch squares, 6-inch squares to make a block that looks just like this. With the triangles on the corner, we're not cutting any triangles. There's no rulers, there's no templates or anything. The only thing you have to be ultra careful with making this block and handling this block ever so gently, ever so carefully, is this is on the bias, which means this edge will stretch once we cut it, okay? I have used a starch every step of the way with my pressing and my ironing, as I show you in the following little tutorial. This is back to beginner basics here, folks. I know quite a lot of you are new. I have almost 52,000 subscribers, and so many of you are my faithful fans from way back, and who know this. But if you're wanting to make a simple block, a simple quilt, perhaps just a little even throw pillow, a little bit more interesting than just some squares put together. This is squares put together, cut, and then put back together. And we come up with this. So I hope you enjoy this little fairly in-depth tutorial. Let me just see. Using 5-inch squares, this block measures unfinished 13 inches. 13 inches. So if you use 6-inch squares, 7-inch squares even, to make your fabric, to make your quilt really pretty. I am going to be putting sashing between these, as I explained, on that bias edge, cutting off just a tiny little corner. But as you can see, my lovely little 4-patch in here sort of evolves very quickly and pretty. So I do hope you enjoy this, folks. Again, thanks so much for following along. I appreciate all your support and love from the Trueloves. I hope you enjoy the video. Bye. This is a look over my shoulder. Now I have 3 quite coordinating. This one is called On the Dot 5-Carat Gems by, oh, I can't see that. Let me just see. By Wilmington Fabrics, don't know. This is Wyndham Fabrics, Eden, by Sally Kelly. I don't know why I've pulled all of these. And this is called Rose Lemonade Charm Squares by Robert Kaufman. Okay, and they also look the same. I know, but I don't know why I pulled 3 whole packs of charm squares. But I would think the way this is made, you're going to need quite a few charm squares, or any pieces of fabric. Maybe if you want to cut up all your scraps to 4 inches, doesn't really matter what size. They just have to be square. You could probably use 8-inch squares, I think, because the first thing we're going to be doing is, I'm just going to pull out, these are also coordinating. I'm just going to pull out just from a few. Here's On the Dot. I like that one. That's so pretty. And this one, this is from a different thing. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making a ton of 4 patches. That's it. Sewing the patches together, trying to coordinate or not, just pulling random pieces from random squares. That's it. I basically am sewing squares together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the camera right behind me here, so you can see I'm just pulling from my charm square packs, all different fabrics, obviously scraps, right? Okay, and I'm just going to start sewing together my scraps, or my 5-inch squares, down one side, making a 2-patch. Okay, I'm just sewing the pretty sides together. This is a very basic block. Pretty sides together. My pretty side to my pretty side of my 5-inch square, and I'm using a 1/4-inch seam, and I'm chain piecing. I think this will be a very quick project. Just to make a few blocks. I'll see how they turn out. In my mind, they're turning out well. In reality, I'm not quite sure. So just stick that together. So that will be 2 blocks. Let me do a few more. Let me do a few more here. Very important is I'm going to go over to my iron and I'm going to set that seam right there, and then I'm going to roll it over, whichever it is, up to the dark side. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take all of these over to my my sewing machine, and I'm going to start making 4 patches. Very, very simple. Obviously, just a 4 patch like that. Sew it down. Make sense. When I go to put the right sides of the fabrics together to make my 4 patch, again, this is for beginners, this seam here is going down, and that seam on the bottom is going up. So that way, I can just nest this together. The intersection will meet very nice because they're all the same size. And I can just continue chain piecing my 4 patches. I'm setting the seam. Now, you may find this, especially as beginners, this is fairly a redundant task. This is obviously for very beginners, this little project here. I always say that the secret, or one of the secrets, to really good quilting is not rushing, enjoying yourself, and also taking the time to iron and to press. Now, I like to iron. A lot of people say press up and down. Whatever's your preference. I'm okay with moving my iron slightly like this. This is my little mini iron. I do have an iron and a lisso that lifts up. That's for some larger projects sometimes. But I have a nice hot little iron here. And the fact that I'm opening up my seam here is, I think, fairly important to this block, this project here. And as you can see, I'm starching my blocks really, really good because there are going to be bias edges. Again, this isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. Take your time, even though this is a basic 4 patch. You're wanting to have a really, really crisp, nice pressed block. A lot of people say, why in the world can't I do it at the very end? You know, and you know, I can iron my seams at the very end. Well, you could, but I guarantee your project's not going to come out quite as sharp and crisp and nice as if you just take your time, put on some music here, and just nudge that center seam open, or enjoy the ironing process or the pressing process, and your quilt's going to end up really, really nice. Don't rush it. And don't, I mean, a lot of people have a favorite thing that they like to do. Maybe pressing or ironing is not their favorite task, but it's a necessary one. And then your block, like so, will come out just beautiful. And this project, well starched, okay? Well starched. You need nice stiff blocks, because now the magic, I think, if I remember correctly, is we're going to be cutting this block. Sewing together 4 5-inch squares gives you a 9.5-inch block, unfinished. I don't know what that has anything to do with it, but if that's what it is. Anyway, what we're going to do is I have my blocks over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to line this up on my cutting mat, and I'm going to cut. Oh, I will be cutting that off. Oh yeah, look at that. Anyway, I'm going to cut this block in half on the diagonal from point to point. End result is if we're going to have whole squares in this block. So whichever whole square you want, as opposed to a triangle square, think about where you want to cut. So, oh, you got that? So if I want this pink and this yellow to be my whole square in my block, then I'm going to cut on the diagonal here. So these end up triangles. You got that? So I think I'm going to have these as triangles and this pink and this yellow as my whole square. So I'm lining my ruler up from corner to corner, and it's going right through that intersection there. Right there. And I'm holding that tightly, very slowly. I'm going to take my rotary cutter. I'm going to go right through that intersection very slowly, close my cutter, and separate my two pieces. So now we end up with all of these, and yes, they are cut on the bias. This is where you have to be very careful. I'm not bothered with that. I have starched these, and when I start to go to put them together, I will be very, very careful. My 4 patches in half on the diagonal. Now, if you're absolutely unbelievably worried about the bias edge that will come, what you can do is you can draw a line, perhaps with some chalk or with a marker if you so desire, like so, right down the middle where we're going to be cutting. But you can go over to your machine. Now I can see that I've have that marked line there. You can't, but I can. So you can draw that line, and then you can go and you can actually just stay stitch. Not a very, maybe loosen your stitch just slightly. Draw your line like so. As you can see, I've drawn my line, and now I'm just doing like a stay stitch, fairly close, but not on the line, right through that intersection, right next to the line, and I'm just chain piecing this bias edge. I'll put my needle down, and I will grab that again, so not to stretch that edge, and I'll just come back on myself and do right close to the edge again. And again, this stitching, be careful not to stretch it while you're stitching this. This stitching will be hidden in the next seams. Now, as you can see, I have stitched with a stay stitching line there on either side of my line, and then I've pressed that again really, really well. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to put my straight edge right on the line that I have drawn. I can see that I'm not cutting my stitching. I'm just going to go carefully right through on the line. And then I have 2 triangles where this edge, the bias edge, is now secure. So what we do is I have a whole pile here of lovely cut up triangles. Now the point is to make this block is you want to put 4 whole squares in the center, okay? And then we have triangles on the edges, okay? And it makes a really pretty block. So I'm just going to start grabbing. There we go. That's nice. So do you understand that? There's my yellow, whole block, whole block, whole block, okay? So let's do it this way. There you go. I cut the corners off. Yeah, this method you're going to cut corners off. That's okay. Don't worry about it. So now I'm going to take this one, and I want the whole block, remember, the whole square in the center, like that. You just see over here. Oh, it's so pretty. So I want the whole block. Oh, that's so pretty. Like so, in the center. So I have the 4 patch in the center with the 8 triangles on the end, and we haven't really cut any triangles, okay? But now, obviously, when we go to put this together, we're going to cut off these squares. This will be fine, but these won't. I'm fine with it. So now, if we just continue making this, how long did that take? Literally, you know, just however long that took. So I'm going to just do this next one here. So I'm going to put my large square in the middle. Let me start it out does it go there? My large square goes in the middle. My other large square in the middle there. Okay. Just a awesomely scrappy quilt here. Look at that. I just started that. So look. Oh, that's really oh, okay. Oh, well, if you put them together, they just make squares. Well, that's not fun. So, you see that? I'm thinking I'm going to put sashing in here to make the blocks pop. Yeah, I'm going to do that. 2 blocks already, just as while I'm nattering on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this here very carefully, and I'm going to sew the seam 1/4 inch right there, right along there, and this seam and that seam. Actually, if you notice, they're the ones that are pressed open, so you just have to match them very carefully. Don't stretch them. Don't stretch them at all. Okay, sew that to there. All right, and then sew this one to here, like so, and they'll really match up really nice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over pretty side to pretty side, and we're going to sew that seam down the bottom. Then I'm at my machine, and I brought all my little triangles over, and I want to make sure I configure it properly because you can get messed up. So I bring it right in front of me, and I have my 1, 2, 3 whole squares right in the middle. I have like a 4 patch right in the middle there. So what I want to do is I want to put the pretty side. This is the seam I want to be sewing, right? That's the seam I want to be sewing on this unit here. So I just lay that there. These are bias edges. I don't want to hear it. I'm telling you ahead of time. I've starched them beautifully. Okay? And then this one up here is I'm going to pull that over pretty side to pretty side. And this is the seam I'm going to be sewing. Okay? So you've configured it properly. So I'm sewing this seam and this seam. So actually I can just sort of chain piece that. Let me just put that like that. I can sort of hold that like that because this is the seam I know. You can pin this obviously. I'm going to start at the top, 1/4 inch. Go slowly. And that seam right there is going to match beautifully. Actually, that one is nesting. One is going one way. Just pull that out so I don't stretch that edge there. Just be very careful. Go slowly. This is matching up. This is the seam I want to be sewing. Go slowly. And now the next seam I want to be sewing is this one here. So as you can see, I'm making almost 2 identical units. This seam I had pressed open, and that seams, but that's matching. And you see how slow I'm going? If you're a beginner, just go slowly. And again, don't pull this triangle here. You'll be fine. I cannot reiterate how important it is to not pull, just to let your machine pull through that, or you will get a very wobbly, biased block. Right off. And then again, pinch the thread so you're not pulling that bias, and pull. And then what we're going to do, and a marathon, not a sprint. I'm going to go over and I'm going to set these seams. I'm going to press one way, press the other way, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to So as you can see, as quick as that was to make this video, 20 minutes or so, I have made these 2 beautiful blocks, okay? Again, I cannot reiterate how important it is to use heavy starch and starch your bias edges, but once it's all starched and nice and flat, Beautiful. Now how I'm going to put these together, I'm going to do a more like a solid that reads solid sashing to separate the jumble of scraps here. However wide I want to make it, maybe just a little bit or a little bit wider, however big. If you want to do 6-inch squares, you end up with a nice big block here. Really, really nice, quick, easy, without cutting a million triangles here. Now, when I put my sashing on, I will be cutting off this square here. I'm not bothered about that because your eye goes to that point there. And we've cut that beautifully right there. And that 4-patch matches up beautifully. And you'll lose that there on that little corner there. I'm absolutely fine with that. So, and it's so pretty. I hope you've enjoyed this, folks. All right. Love from the Trueloves. Bye-bye.